From a yin to my yang to Z. Put a grin on my chin when you come to me, 'cause I'll win, I'm a one of a kind, and I'll bring death to the place you're about to be. Another river of blood running under my feet. Forged in the fire lit long ago. Stand next to me, you'll never stand alone. I'm last to leave, but the first to go. Lord, make me dead before you make me whole. I feed on the fear of the devil inside of the enemy faces in my sight. Aim with a hand, shoot with a mind, kill with a heart like Arctic ice.
I am a soldier and I'm marching on.
I am a soldier and I'm marching on.
I am a warrior, this is my song.
I am a warrior and this is my song. I'm basking the glow of the rising war. Lay waste to the ground of an enemy shore. Wade through the blood spilled on the floor. And if another one stands, I'll kill some more. Bullet in the breach and a fire in me, like a cigarette thrown to gasoline. If death don't bring you fear, I swear you'll fear these marching feet. Come to the nightmare, come to me. Deep down in the dark where the devil be. In the mall where the jaws and the razor teeth, where the brimstone burns and the angel weeps. Crawl to the gods of a cross your path, and my silhouette hangs like a body bag. Hope is a moment now long past. The shadow of death is the one I cast. I am a soldier and I'm marching on. I am a warrior and this is my song. My eyes are steel and my gaze is long. I am a warrior and this is my song.
We're not just going to shoot the bastard. We're going to cut out their living guts and use them to grease the treads of our tanks. We're going to murder those lousy bastards by the bushel.
Now I live lean and I mean to inflict the grief, and the least of me is still out of your reach. The killing machine's gonna do the deed until the river runs dry and my last breath leaves. Chin in the air with a head held high, I'll stand in the path of the enemy line. Feel no fear, know my pride. For God and country I'll end your life. I am a soldier and I'm marching on. I am a warrior and this is my song. My eyes are steel and my gaze is long. I am a warrior and this is my song.
All right, now you sons of bitches, you know how I feel.
And welcome to Cold War Radio, ladies and gentlemen, live on our home base, WAAR. We are America Radio, your number one source for streaming political and government talk anywhere. I'm Hutch Bailey Jr., deep down in the bunker in my Smith & Wesson studio in the city of Pittsburgh from the Shenandoah Valley. Let's welcome Jack to the program. Good evening, Jack. Come in, please.
Hey, good to hear from you, Hutch. Missed you last week. I was out of town, and want to thank all the people in Spreaker that were sending their thoughts and prayers for my son. My lovely wife is over down in the city watching over him. He's going through some nasal surgery tonight, so I want to apologize in advance. If you do hear a dog barking, that would be my dog missing Mama, but she'll be back tomorrow.
Well, we all love dogs anyway. Mine barks too. What are you going to do? And we hope your son gets better very quickly. Ladies and gentlemen, please follow me on Spreaker. Like the Facebook page, facebook.com/Cold War Radio 22. You can catch the show on Roku, Blueberry, YouTube, the 405 Media, iHeartRadio, and the iPhone app. Working on the Android right now. If you already have it, it works, but we're working on getting that back in the market. The email is hutch@steelcityresistance.com. Cold War Radio patron hotline, 412-567-1460. The chat room is up on Spreaker. Go to steelcityresistance.com and catch all the links you need to get there. If you're not there already, you can catch the show notes links there and become a Cold War Radio patron in the right-hand margin. If you want to send mail, it's Hutch Bailey Jr., P.O. Box 96022, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, 15226. Back at the website, I got to fix the order of this stuff. Back at the website, also in the right-hand margin under our links, the top link is you get 15% off of the official coffee of Cold War Radio, Black Rifle coffee, veteran-owned, veteran-made. Good stuff. I got a cup right here. Jack, we're going to cover a couple things that are going on in the American headline news area, and then we're going to dive deeper into a couple military topics that are not being covered anywhere, and then we'll go from there. But for right now, it seems like Judge Roy Moore is doing much better. He's starting to raise some money now, and this is without any assistance from the RNC. Can you believe they're not helping him? I mean, this is something that just it's bizarro world.
It's Alabama versus the swamp, the unit party, and the fake news media all at once. It's your one man, but a lot of the listeners here, we're part of that crew, and we're doing our best to keep supporting a supporter of Trump and his MAGA movement.
Absolutely.
It's obvious to anyone that's involved with the MAGA movement why this is happening. And it looks like he is doubling down, standing up for himself, and I love to see it. So
I do too. Let's listen to the local Alabama ABC affiliate. Producer clip 1.
New at 6, big bucks now flowing into Alabama's Senate race that's getting nationwide attention following sexual misconduct allegations against Roy Moore. ABC 3340's political reporter Lauren Walsh explains where fundraising stands in the race. Lauren?
Brenda, sources tell me after the Washington Post report with allegations against Moore broke, Jones was collecting more than $250,000 each day. And Moore's fundraising also grew. In the last 10 days, his campaign manager tells me he's raised more than $1 million. And that's without the support from the RNC.
Meet Doug Jones.
TV ads, an expensive part of political campaigns, and one that allows candidates to get their messages in voters' homes.
We trust Roy Moore.
New data from Advertising Analytics shows Democrat Doug Jones is outspending Republican Roy Moore 7-1 on TV time. A stat that considered the $300,000 purchase Moore booked Monday afternoon. Political scientist Dr. Scott Turner explains why those ads are especially important for Jones.
For Jones, he has to be able to present himself as the preferable alternative, the acceptable alternative. And because he wasn't that known of a figure previously, he's got to spend money to get that name out there.
Turner points out Moore already had high name recognition.
The money, the TV ads, are probably not going to change this narrative for Roy Moore.
Turner says Moore's supporters likely won't be swayed by his ads in their decision to stick with him or not. Both sides are trying to raise more money. Moore's campaign has cited the allegations against him in fundraising emails, saying he must continue the fight. In an email Monday morning, the Moore campaign cited Jones' large collections when asking for their own contributions. While the RNC pulled financial support for Moore, the DNC continues to try to help Jones. It sent out this email in support of its party's nominee. And Jones hits the campaign trail again tomorrow with an appearance in Huntsville and one in Birmingham Wednesday, and we're still waiting to learn where.
So, Jack, you have to wonder, is any of that money that Jones is getting, nobody knows Jones, is any of that money coming from Mitch McConnell and the RNC, I wonder?
That would be pretty sketchy. I think, the McConnell and the GOP establishment have already basically overspent, right? $30 million in the Senate race. I mean, all these races that we've seen, Tom Price's seat in Georgia,
yeah.
I mean, just crazy money being spent, but those candidates lost.
And they're all in to pound this guy about
right.
these phony allegations. But have you seen them lining up talking about Menendez and Franken and the rest of these people? You don't hear them say anything. Conyers,
right?
Nothing. But
it's starting to be. I mean, to me, it's like it's starting to be oversaturated with accusations. But the mainstream media picks and chooses which one they want to put front and center. And it's obvious who they're putting front and center.
It is
the Alabama senator candidate, Judge Roy Moore.
And something that we've been looking for, at least I have. I've been looking to see where the president was going to come down on this. You're going to like this, ladies and gentlemen. Clip 2.
I can tell you one thing for sure. We don't need a liberal person in there, a Democrat. Jones, I've looked at his record. It's terrible in crime. It's terrible in the border. It's terrible in the military. I can tell you for a fact, we do not need somebody that's going to be bad on crime, bad on borders, bad with the military, bad for the Second Amendment.
Is an accused child molester better than a Democrat? Is an accused
Well, he
child
denies it.
molester better
Look,
than
he
a
denies it. I mean, if you look at what is really going on, and you look at all the things that have happened over the last 48 hours, he totally denies it. He says it didn't happen. And, you know, you have to listen to him also. You're talking about, he said 40 years ago this did not happen. So, you know. I'll be letting you know next week. But I can tell you, you don't need somebody who's soft on crime like Jones.
See, that's why I love Donald Trump, man. I mean, he's pragmatic. He's not afraid to say. He has gained the ability, somewhat anyway, to wait and think about what he's going to say a little bit more. But I don't even care. I like the spontaneity. I really do. I think that's the way I am, and that's the way a lot of people are. And you get tired of listening to responses from people like Paul Ryan and John McCain, and it's just so phony.
Yeah, that's it. That's the cookie cutter GOP weak establishment that conservatives have, you know, fumed over for years. They just bend over backwards and then leave. Right. Because if you look at what the media has done to candidate Moore and compare that to the stories that, if they even get mentioned with Franken and Conyers, as far as Congress people, they basically say the senator denies this or he apologized, it's over, it's nothing. You haven't heard one of this. You haven't heard McConnell step up and say Franken needs to resign. You haven't heard Ryan come up and say Conyers needs to resign. All they're going to do is have a little
ethics committee hearing,
right?
That nobody's ever gotten any punishment over. Now, Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky was attacked by his socialist neighbor in their gated community last week. And I want you to hear what MSNBC's Casey Hunt says about this. It tells you all you really need to know about the leftists and about the leftist media and what's really in their hearts. Play the Casey Hunt clip.
Very much. Thanks, Casey.
Thanks, Casey.
New details today on the incident that left Senator Rand Paul with 6 broken ribs. This might be one of my favorite stories, although, of course, we don't want to. Clearly, Senator Paul is still struggling. Paul's neighbor, Renee Boucher, is accused of beating the senator, and GQ reports that lawn care issues may well have been at the heart of the dispute. A neighbor told the magazine that Boucher pays about $150 a month for professional landscaping, while Paul maintains his yard himself. I guess that's the libertarian in him. The neighbor also said that part of what bothered Boucher was the difference in grass length between his lawn and that of Senator Paul's, and that Paul sprayed grass clippings onto his yard while mowing his own grass. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen, the reason for the first assault on a sitting U.S. senator in decades. Meanwhile,
unbelievable, man. I mean, it's her favorite story. And because the guy, they already debunked the story that it was about the lawn 2 weeks ago. But because the guy cuts his own grass, I guess that's the libertarian in him. I mean, it's stunning.
And even just, I mean, I don't know. I've had nightmares of homeowner associations and stuff like that. You've got a guy that doesn't pay somebody to do his lawn, and then you got Rand Paul who takes pride in his yard and does it himself. Even if that part was true, that some of the grass clippings went into the next yard, do you think that deserves 6 broken ribs?
I know. It's unbelievable. But my neighbor blows grass in my driveway, and it used to tick me off, and now I think about it like, well, you know what? First of all, I haven't had to cut that strip of grass in 10 years. And the other thing is, if that's the worst I have to worry about my neighbor, we're in good shape.
Exactly.
You know, he's a great neighbor, you know. But just the hate that comes along with that from
my
MSNBC.
favorite story of the year. Yeah.
And then goes in and says he's got broken ribs
in his own yard.
That's unreal, you know. And I got another clip for you. One more, and this is I think we've totally lost Fox News. This is Cavuto rather, and I just want you to listen to the pearl clutching, panties in a bunch worry about the president tweeting. This is something that even if you agree with him, and I do agree with him a little bit at the end, but just to hear this in his voice, we've lost Fox News. He either felt this way all along, or he got directed to say this. Fox News is going to go down burning, man. It's sad. Last clip, producer.
A president angry at a dad for refusing to say thank you, and so angry at a U.S. senator that he all but says, screw you. Forget about either comment not being presidential. At what point does the president see such remarks don't even border on being human? So what if LeVar Ball doesn't credit the president for getting his son and two other UCLA basketball players out of a jam and likely jail after being charged with shoplifting in China? And so what if Senator Jeff Flake is caught off mic saying the Republican Party would be toast if it stuck with the president and Roy Moore? Is it me, or does the president look like he's punching down when these are the incidents that get him all riled up? Like he's using a bazooka to respond to a pea shooter? Is it really necessary? Especially when in the case of the UCLA thing, all three players did thank the president for getting them home, including LeVar Ball's son, LeAngelo. And in the case of Jeff Flake, did zing the president, yes, but saved his real fire for Roy Moore and the dangers he represents for the Republican Party. No matter what you think of Senator Flake, does it justify the president's over-the-top reaction to Senator Flake, tweeting that he will be a no on tax cuts because his political career anyway is toast? Lovely. Keep tweeting stuff like that, Mr. President, and those tax cuts just could be toast. You might call him part of the swamp and not care, but throwing mud at a U.S. senator doesn't make you any less swamp-like, so maybe you should care. And wishing maybe you should have left those UCLA players in China because a dad wouldn't thank you makes me wonder whether this isn't about players or senators. This is about you, and respect shown to you, and constant praise shown to you, and gratitude bordering on groveling shown to you. As President of the United States, doesn't that already come with the territory? So why are you clawing for more real estate? You've got the real estate. You've got the White House. You've got all the advantage of being the most powerful human being on the planet that you don't have to throttle any human being who offends you on the planet. Let your achievements speak for themselves. Let your clear influence to get those players out of China speak for you. Not a kid's dad who just might be embarrassed, but that kid and his buddies who already told the nation and you they were grateful. Pick your fights, because neither of these seems worth the fuss. You wanted a thank you, you got it. You wanted a reason to go after a senator you hate, you pounced on it. But last time I checked, you are the president of the United States. Why don't you act like it? Good night.
Neil Cavuto, ladies and gentlemen, the president is not even human. I mean, come on, man, really? Over 2 tweets with everything that's going on?
It's a little over the top there, but, you know, Neil's afforded his own opinion. I mean, I'd take a totally different look on the tweet to the Ball father. I didn't even know who these people were until this whole
I had no idea.
Yeah, but to me, when I saw that tweet, and MSM stirred that up because they went and found this guy who supposedly, I guess, self-promotes, and he's got a clothing line and sells
shoes.
A bunch of
stuff. He's got a shoe line.
Yeah, so they went up and baited him and asked him about Trump, and he didn't want to say nothing about it. He didn't want to, mess up. I don't think I saw anything where he was derogatory towards the president.
No, he wasn't really.
He just didn't want to give him credit. Well, to me, it's the easiest thing to do. Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Get my son back. I'm going to make sure he doesn't do this again. And I think maybe that would be the spawning point, because the president didn't have to do anything. These people were caught on tape.
Yeah, he could have been like Obama and just left him over there. You know, like
right.
Obama did in
it's
Iran.
Not like
and
Warren Beer, right?
Yeah.
Warren Beer just was trying to get a piece of memorabilia from a hotel room, and boom, he ended up dead by the time he came back home.
Yeah, no telling what he had to go through.
I know.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, 412-567-1460. We're going to get into the serious portion of the program at this time. And I'll just warn you, I know I have a lot of veterans in the audience. I know I have some high-ranking officers in the audience. I'm going to hurt some feelings, but this needs to be said. It's something that anybody who was in the military for any amount of time, when I'm talking about 70s, 80s, 90s, you're gonna be able to relate to this. This is from the American Thinker, and it's by a guy named Clyde Ward. It caught my attention. It's entitled "The Perfumed Princes of the Pentagon." If you're not familiar with the term "perfumed prince," take a look at Air Force Lieutenant General J. Silveria, commander of the Air Force Academy, Colorado Springs. Silveria achieved the national spotlight by chewing out the entire class over racial slurs posted on 5 cadets' quarters. Months later, it turned out that one of the targets was actually the perpetrator. Here are some bullet points from a field manual. Get the facts before you act. Solve problems at the lowest level. Concede a mistake. Praise in public. Reprimand in private. General Kneejerk violated all of them. When confronted with his error, he replied that this had to be said anyway. Apparently, he was conflating the Charlottesville protests with his own command, not to mention a likely disdain for his commander-in-chief. But here we have an intelligence failure. Charlottesville may well have been a false flag operation, so was the hoax at Silveria's academy. Intelligence must be timely and adequate. Silveria was spot on with time, but dismally inadequate, despite plenty of open source information, a.k.a. news. He could have listened to this program. The general... Good.
Yeah, the general ran it himself into an ambush. Wonder why we don't win wars? Colonel David Hackworth coined the term perfume princes, in quotes, to describe the leaders who sidestepped the Vietnam disaster and infested the senior ranks, playing the academic or business manager while they squeezed out soldiers on the soggy end. But Silveria's rant went beyond careerism. Silveria ordered everyone to video his rant on their cell phones to make sure his spiel went prime time. Everyone, from Senator McCain to Joe Biden, heaped the praise. The Washington Post opined, quote, "Too bad Trump can't emulate the military when it comes to matters of race," end quote. Oh, diversity is the fab fragrance of the perfume princes as required by the political elite.
Now, this next part is very serious. I remember the next two parts. But we'll start with Martin Dempsey, the 18th chairman of the Army Chief of Staff, 2011 to 2015, persisted with the hyphenated American being our strength to the end of his career. Never mind that the attack at Fort Hood in 2009 was perpetrated by a Muslim American, Army psychiatrist major. Of this, General George W. Casey chimed in at the time as horrific. This is like on the same day this happened. I remember when he said this. As horrific as this tragedy was, if our diversity becomes a casualty, I think that's worse. Can you believe that? The tragedy was that Hassan's behavior had been scaring the pants off his colleagues in Army mental health, of all places, for years. But they understand diversity comes first. The tragedy was that the Army maintained that firing some 140 rounds in a medical processing center while yelling Allahu Akbar was workplace violence, until 2015, when a funding bill forced the perfumed princes to reclassify the incident as combat-related. Until then, all of the dozens of victims had been denied appropriate benefits, and the Purple Heart, 13, awarded posthumously. Marine Staff Sergeant Joseph Chamblin was punished for having urinated on a Taliban corpse 5 years ago. The conviction was overturned this November after discovering that then General Amos had interfered in the judicial proceeding. Amos wanted this sort of thing crushed. Chamblin maintains that he made the incriminating video as a propaganda ploy because if an infidel touches the body, they're not going to Mecca or paradise. This is right out of Brigadier General John Pershing's successful tactics in the Philippines, 1909 to 1913, not to mention Clausewitz's concept of the will and the knowledge of one's enemy. Of course, the opponents are diverse, or they wouldn't be at war to begin with.
Chamblin is luckier than Lieutenant Clint Lawrence, who is serving a 20-year sentence for opening fire on suspected Taliban scouts when they ran his checkpoint. Lawrence is one of the Leavenworth 10, referring to a fluctuating number of U.S. servicemen serving time while known terrorists are released from Gitmo. This isn't a matter of holding ourselves to higher standards. It's a matter of having no standards at all. Despite having made war on terrorism, in quotes, for 16 years, the perfumed pirates or princes have yet to provide guidance, neither on trying terrorists nor on how novel rules of engagement translate into traditional military jurisprudence. It's all just fine, just the way it is, whatever it is, even with the terms more generous to the enemy than to our own troops, who are just canonical cannon fodder.
2 Navy SEALs are presently under investigation for the death of Green Beret Logan Melgar in Niger. Where is Niger anyway? Pilfering money from a fund intended to pay informants may be involved. Funds like this are tempting. That is their military purpose. Proper administration requires multiple levels of oversight so that everyone up the chain has to be complicit if anyone pilfers. External audits look for money spent with no results. But the perfumed princes don't really care about money. They don't care about results either. Congress appropriates money it borrows from a printing press and dumps it into an authorization for the use of military force that doesn't have any milestones. How can anyone audit that? A rule of thumb is that if pacification hasn't succeeded in 7 years, then the insurgency has won, or another insurgency has taken its place. Parallel wars can spin off as long as someone's around with a gripe and a gun. Our war on terror has become another war on poverty or war on crime. But that's fine just the way it is with the perfumed princes. Funding anyone?
The latest snafu is a recruit shortage. No kidding. Word gets around. Bradley Manning gets a pardon. Bo Bergdahl walks on a dishonorable discharge. Clint Lawrence remains in jail. Got it? Corrective action is to waive mental disorders. A novel solution even for an army as committed to diversity as ours. Understand, the perfumed princes are not lowering the standards. The perfumed policy is to forward waivers for evaluation in the light of new knowledge about mental disorders. The mental health evaluators are Nadal Hassan's colleagues. They understand. Numbers count.
There also remains a large body of old knowledge in which homosexual behavior indicates mental disorders. Bradley Manning received counseling regarding his sexual problems as required by regulation and cognizant authority. The problem here is that cognizant authority is a perfumed prince. It took a full-blown act of treason and espionage to reach the proper diagnosis. American elites are killing America. But when our most focused, disciplined, and universal institution withers, it's time to stop, smell the roses, and pin the carnations. Perfumed princes are not going to fall on their own swords. Bo Bergdahl and Bradley Manning are of grotesquely inadequate characters, but it's not to avoid jail that they enlisted. 'Twas a time when a judge could offer enlistment in certain cases in lieu of jail. It put a burden upon the military, but not an unusual one. Numbers count. Some didn't make it, although many did, under military leaders. But that's not what Lieutenant General Silveria is training up. God knows this generation is hurting for leaders like what no generation America has ever bred. That was a powerful one, Jack, I had to bring.
Yeah, that's definitely a very excellent, hard-nosed attack on what is going on with our military. I mean, he could have added in, the West Point cadet. I mean, because this
right,
the main guy in this article, wasn't he in charge of the Air Force Academy? So now you got two of the of
service academies.
Yeah, two of the service academies pulling this political correctness, for lack of another
and
word.
It's everywhere. I mean, you've got a situation where you've got military people that are much more trained on sexual harassment than they are with their own weapons, and that's literally. We've reached that point where we can blow the weapons training off, but by God, we're going to have that transgender training, and everybody's going to sign in, and anybody who's not there is going to get dinged.
Yeah, it goes to that connect where these higher up leaders in all branches of the military are tied too closely to the politics and policies and have gotten away from what the military is for, a fighting force. All of that little excerpt from the field manual is what rings true to me as an NCO, right?
Right.
You praise everyone out in the open. If you have a problem child or somebody that's maybe struggling, you pull them off to the side. You have a one-on-one and you try to find out what's holding him back or her back and try to make it better. You don't reprimand in front of the whole squad. That's self-defeating.
And I mean, you had the Strategic Airlift Command, saying that he said what was able to be perceived as he would disobey an order from the president. That's not what he said, but he's a 4-star general. He should know better. He allowed it to be perceived that he would not necessarily obey an order to launch missiles.
Right.
That's crazy.
The one where it came out that he would disobey an illegal order. Well, no crap. You have a right. If it's an illegal order, that's one of the things you can stand up and say, no, sir, this is illegal. I can't do this. Then you're going to have to go through some scenarios. He's going to go around you or whatever. But you don't sit there and pull that out as far as nuke deals with the president.
And, to me, after watching President Trump and his actions and operations overseas, I feel more comfortable with him having that football than I did George W. Bush. And I'm just saying, I'm serious. Yeah. There's no way he's going to take that lightly. 412-567-1460. Do you have an opinion on the last story or anything? Give us a call. We're going to get into one more serious, actually everything on the show is serious, but we're going to go to Front Page Magazine and Daniel Greenfield, a Shulman Journalism Fellow at the Freedom Center and an investigative journalist and writer focusing on the radical left and Islamic terrorism. I'm going to have to get him back on the show. He's been on the show before. Just a brilliant author. If you go to Front Page Magazine and check his writing out, he also has a blog, and I'm trying to remember the name of it, and maybe I will. Sultan Kanish. But he's predicting some things here that are pretty easy to predict, but he does it in a professional manner. The next big Middle Eastern war, Saudi Arabia versus Iran. The Syrian civil war killed hundreds of thousands and displaced millions. Its ripple effects brought terror to Europe and dragged the United States into the fighting, and it's just the appetizer for the coming war. The real war is the one that the Saudis and the Iranians have been maneuvering toward for years. Those maneuvers included everything from Iran's nuke deal, the fighting in Yemen, the Syrian civil war, the Iraqi suppression of Kurdish independence, the rise of ISIS, and the Qatari embargo. The death toll from the build-up to the Sunni-Shiite regional war is approaching 1 million, and the war hasn't even begun yet. It may never become an actual war as we understand it. It's possible that there will be 100 little wars exploding across the region. These wars will tear apart more than the region, more of the region, and the talking heads on television will blame global warming or Israeli settlements, and you know they will. Those progressive excuses make much more sense to the media than an Islamic religious war, and it will almost certainly drag us in. Obama's policies lit the fuse. The withdrawal from Iraq, the Arab Spring, the Iranian... they talk about impeaching Trump. They should have impeached Obama for giving all that back in Iraq after all the people that died for that, and all the people that were misfigured and wounded gravely, and he just gave it back and started all this, just like they said.
And remember who allowed him to do it? The GOPE.
Sure, absolutely. Didn't lift a finger. When the United States left Iraq, Iran took control. The Arab Spring tore apart the region, and Iran used the opportunity to expand its power over Yemen, Iraq, and Syria. The nuke deal signaled that Obama wouldn't do anything to stop Iran from becoming a nuclear power or a regional power. And by outsourcing the fight against ISIS to Shiite terrorist militias, Obama allowed Iran to consolidate control over Iraq and Syria. The Saudis and the Iranians are both assembling their coalitions, and they're coloring outside the lines. Qatar's billionaire Sunni Islamists are aligned with Iran. That's why the Saudis slapped an embargo on the terrorist state. Meanwhile, Israel is loosely aligned with the Saudis. That may sound strange, but Israel's biggest threats from Iran's nukes to Hamas and Hezbollah terrorists can be traced back to Tehran.
The Saudis are no slouches when it comes to funding Islamic terrorists, but Qatar's fellow Sunni oil tyrannies looked at that way that it allies, the Muslim Brotherhood and Al-Qaeda variants, were tearing apart entire countries, and decided that the little terror state had become too powerful and dangerous. Iran and Qatar aggressively expanded their influence by using Islamist militias to tear down and take over countries. And between them, the two Islamic terror states were transforming the Middle East. And so the Muslim Brotherhood's coup in Egypt was met with another coup. The Saudis aren't just hammering Iran's Shiite Houthi militias in Yemen, they're also helping fight Islamists in Libya. The current alignment puts Iran, the Muslim Brotherhood, and certain Islamist militias in the same corner.
And don't forget what we did when that Muslim Brotherhood with the Arab Spring, the United States government, under Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, James Clapper and John Brennan, stood strong with the Muslim Brotherhood against Hosni Mubarak and the government of Egypt. Don't ever forget that.
Yep, that definitely. I mean, you have to look back and see what was unleashed in the Arab Spring and who was behind it. Secretary of State Clinton and President Barack Obama. They opened that door.
Absolutely.
And it's hurting us and killing folks to this day.
And ladies and gentlemen, you can catch the rest of that story at the show notes links. I'm watching the show clock, and I want to get a couple more things in here, so you're going to have to catch the rest of that story. It outlines it pretty well on how this could happen. I mean, it's all speculation, but there's a lot of truth behind it. I want to make sure that this story gets out there. This is something that I've talked about for a long time. I think that the story of slavery in the world is not in the United States. In the United States, it was but a blip. It was about a 300-year blip. The real story of slavery is in the Middle East and in Africa. How Obama brought back Muslim slavery of black people. Hope Changed Slave. Another one from Front Page Magazine and from Daniel Greenfield. As a matter of fact, he got two of them on tonight's show. America's first black president didn't bring hope to America, but he did bring slave auctions to Africa. After Obama liberated Libya for the Islamist rebels, Arab Muslims sell black slaves for a few $100s at slave auctions. While leftists tear down the statues of slave owners from a century ago, it was the left that brought back the sale of black men as property. Slavery was always one of Barack Obama's favorite subjects. It was a favorite subject because it provided him with countless opportunities for tearing down America. When called upon to disavow the racist, anti-Semitic, and anti-American rants of his mentor, he instead denounced the Constitution as stained by this nation's original sin of slavery. At the funeral of the Dallas police officers murdered by a member of the racist hate group he supported, he once again invoked this original sin, even while he was justifying Black Lives Matter's bigotry and violence. At Hillary's DNC convention, Michael Obama, Big Mike, claimed that the White House had been built by slaves. The unifying theme was that America's racist past made its origins, including their constitutional restraints on his power, illegitimate. A constitution tainted by slavery should not be able to inhibit the actions of the nation's first black president. His wife had a special moral authority over the White House because it had been built by slaves. Slavery gave the Obamas a unique moral claim on power. So, Barack Obama and his ancestors had never been slaves. They might have been slave owners and sellers. That's the part they always forget, is who sold us the slaves. But at any rate, his foreign policy definitely, they didn't pay any attention to Africa. I mean, when he did pay attention to Africa, it was to reward Muslim violence against African Christians in Nigeria, Kenya, or Côte d'Ivoire, the Ivory Coast. And most prominently Libya. I remember stories when that uprising took place. There was a lot of African migrant workers in Libya, and they became immediate targets. Jack.
Yeah, it's the Libya deal. You had a stable country. Sure, they had a strong leader and all that, but it's just as soon as Gaddafi in Libya was taken off the terror watch list and accepted back in, right? He even visited the United States and had the meetings, diplomatic meetings and all that stuff. Shortly thereafter, boom, he's the devil again. The whole world's against him. They go in, and what is Hillary saying? We came, we saw, he died. Like it's a joke. The Obama legacy is the destruction of a lot of the Middle East and Northern Africa. You're looking at the aftermath now. There's more destabilization in that entire region than there ever was before he came into office. And he's got to own that.
The Tuaregs, a Berber Islamist people whose leaders came to trace their pure ancestry back to Muhammad, invaded and captured a large section of Mali. You might remember this from about a year ago. Accompanying them were al-Qaeda jihadists. The Tuaregs keep slaves and have been at war with the blacks. Their hostilities were motivated in large part by the conviction that blacks were slaves while they were the descendants of Muhammad. Obama ignored another racist Islamist war caused by his pro-Islamist intervention. Instead, it was the French that stepped up. The recent deaths of 4 American soldiers in Niger, however, can be traced back to the disaster in Mali. Sergeant La David Johnson, the African-American soldier whose condolence call by President Trump touched off a storm of leftist outrage, was murdered after being captured and tied up. The jihadists who murdered Johnson are believed to be from the Islamic State in the Greater Sahara, an ISIS affiliate empowered by the Mali invasion, whose perpetrators are from a group deeming themselves white. While President Trump has been accused of racism by Representative Frederica Wilson over the death of the African-American soldier, it was Obama who had empowered the racist Islamists that murdered him. Meanwhile, back in Libya, the slave trade has made a comeback. Videos show public slave auctions in Libya where light-skinned Arab Libyans sell black Nigerians for a few $100s. The slave auction, that terrible institution, wasn't brought back by the right, it was brought back by the left. There it is, Jack, another distortion. But slavery isn't new to the Islamic world. It's been happening for 1,700 years.
Yeah, it's the truth. I mean, that's why it's so great to have this show, because most folks, you're not going to hear this on the mainstream media. They're not going to tell the truth about the situation going over there. Libya is still under turmoil. You have the situation with Frederica Wilson, who was asking, why are the Marines in Niger, when she's one of the ones that co-sponsored the bill to help the Christians who were being persecuted in that country last year. That's true. And she's coming up now and saying, hey, why are we even there? Didn't you just co-sponsor a bill last year? It's crazy. But it's good that the truth's out there, and it's great to have this show to have the truth spread out there, and people can learn the truth.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the great things about doing this show, you'll probably find this out yourself after a few months. Well, you've been here a few months already. You might have found out already. Doing this show, you learn stuff. Just by even, I learn things every week that I didn't know that I'm just so glad I'm able to put out there, and I'm glad that so many people listen, and it's really, it makes you feel good, but it's a shame that so many people don't know these things.
But it's good that the word's out, and there's a lot of people that tune in. There's a lot of people that share. So it's going to start reaching. It's starting to reach people, and you can't hide the truth. When it gets out there, it's infectious. When people start saying and realizing that they've been lied to, if they just sit there and trust that the mainstream media networks is going to give you the information you need to carry on to your next day. Because most people, they got to work for a living, they got to take care of their families and all these things they're responsible for. They don't have the time, so they put this trust in the news to tell them, keep them updated. But when they start listening to shows like Cold War Radio or Wayne Dupree Show, and they start saying, wait a minute, I never heard of this. And you give them links and the stories and the articles and the facts, and they can read it, and they're saying, wait a minute, I've been sold a bill of lies. And when the president stands up and says, you are fake news now.
I think that got him elected. I think that right there, that act right there was one of the things that I think was universally felt throughout those crowds. You have to be, Democrats can't believe all that stuff. It's just too much. Maybe a very low information person could, but I think that helped him a lot. Now, here's something that is beyond recognition. We got a judge problem, Jack. Federal judge says Trump administration cannot stop funding sex-reassignment surgeries for military members. How does a judge get in the middle of that? He's supposed to be the commander. These people are telling him all these things that he cannot do. I think we need to purge our judiciary.
Well, when you got the Perfumed princes in cahoots,
that's true too.
We just did that story, and you combine it. Now you can sort of see why this is all happening. I try to fathom, and I have no inhibitions. People get to do what they want to do. As far as this particular topic,
not this group of people.
I'm just thinking about it through a military mind aspect, as a unit, as a readiness, because you want to be 100% ready. You have to have all your people trained. You have to have all your equipment as up to 100% as possible. So if you're called to go to war, you can complete your mission. That's how I think of it. So when you add this in there, and I'm thinking, okay, how long does this take? How much time am I lost? Who am I going to get to replace these people while they're doing this? I just think on that analytical angle, and I think that's another aspect that's being brought in.
I do too. I don't know if you just got the world clock countdown that the Shenandoah Valley's about ready to explode there.
Yeah, that's my phone.
But this is the second ruling by a federal judge that's halted the administration's proposed transgender military ban, finding that active duty service members are already suffering harmful consequences because of the president's policy. I don't even want to know what those harmful things are, but I just don't think that there's that many transgenders in the military. They ought to get them out.
I know we've had too many incidents with the Navy, with all the ships. How many collisions going on? Is that lack of training, lack of readiness? Come on, you're talking millions.
They're spending too much time.
Billions.
They're spending too much time in the shower or something.
I don't know.
I'll tell you, we got to clean this up. I mean, we've got sworn enemies in the U.S. military. Just look at Hassan, and there's several more of them going all the way back to Camp Liberty when we were in Kuwait before we were going to invade Iraq. When he lit up the tent with the grenades and the rifle. I mean, that was the first Muslim attack. And we still have them in there, and it's just Perfumed princes don't want to say it's our enemy. When it clearly is, all you have to do is read the books. Go to my website, steelcityresistance.com. Go in the research room. The Hadith, the Sunnah, and the Quran are all in there. And so are 10 other documents that tell you in these people's own tongue and in their own words, their own written words, that they want to take us out and take over the world. And it hasn't changed since 700 AD. As soon as Muhammad moved from Mecca to Medina, it started, it was on, and they went on for the conquest of the Ummah. Go check it out, I'm telling you. Now, last but not least, this is something that is rampant. This is what we talked about at the Air Force Academy. Hate hoax, racist graffiti at high school was written by non-white student. From the Daily Caller, Justin Caruso, media reporter, said the student who wrote racist graffiti at a high school in Missouri last week is reportedly non-white. Graffiti reading, "White Lives Matter," and containing a racial slur was found written on a bathroom mirror at Parkway Central High School. In a Tuesday report from Fox 2, the school district said that the student who wrote it was non-white but did not give a name. Now, why would somebody do this? Any idea? Have you been following this?
The only thing I know is that during the Trump's, after he got elected, you had churches burned, Nazi swastikas and all this, and race baiting stuff spray painted on it. The one that I'm citing turned out to be a choir member in that church. So it's almost like there's so many events that turn out to be hoaxes that it's almost like a cry wolf syndrome. Eventually, one of these days, it's going to actually be something that is actually race hatred, or maybe a Black Lives Matter does something, or a white supremacist group does something, and the people are just going to be like, I don't know what to believe here, because all these events like this. That high school thing, the first thing I think of is somebody's trying to get out of taking a test or something.
Right. They used to blow up bathrooms when I was in high school. Not literally blow them up, but they used to like flush M80s down the toilet and blow the toilet off the wall and stuff like that. And freaking cops would come. It was nuts. Ladies and gentlemen, there's no show on Thursday, no show on Thanksgiving. There will be a Wayne Dupree program tonight, but I'll listen to that show for the schedule there. Do you have any final comments, or what's going on with you, Jack? You want to share anything else with the audience?
Yeah, I just always want to thank the Spreaker chat room. If you're listening and you haven't been in there, you need to get in there. There's some of the finest folks on planet Earth that cruise the Spreaker chat room, and I do want to wish anyone listening now that they have a happy Thanksgiving coming up. And blessings to all. And thank you again, Hutch, for letting me be a part of something very amazing.
Outstanding. No problem. You're doing a great job, Jack. That's why you're still here. Again, I'd like to thank everybody I'd like to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. And I just hope that you, remember what you're doing it for. It's for giving thanks. And Rocky, it's time to go start that thing up there, get that thing rolling. Up on the roof. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for listening live. I want to thank everybody who's listening on the podcast and any other way on YouTube, however you catch the show. I'm Hutch Bailey Jr. on Facebook, Bird's Eye View on Twitter. Getting ready to go up and get in this chopper. We're going to fly up to Baltimore. The Wayne Dupree program is next. Thanks for letting us into your life for 1 hour, ladies and gentlemen. God bless.
Oh,
Cold War Radio Eagle 1 cleared for takeoff.
Cold War Radio Eagle 1, Baltimore bound man. Destination We Are America Radio Studio, Rocky out.